Hello and welcome to the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast. The intention of this podcast is to open your mind, get curious about yourself and connect to the power you hold within. I am your host, Karen Maloney, an inside-out coach, helping you to believe in yourself and manifest your desires. Check out the podcast, available on all platforms, and go to my website, www.karenmaloney.com for all info. Hello everybody. Happy Thursday and thanks for joining for another episode. This week my guest is Mandalei Kuhn, and Mandalei works with women who want to cut through the noise and busyness of life and connect to their true nature as heart-centered beings. She does this for herself with plant medicine and helps others to do the same, namely with Ceremonial Cacao from Magic Earth Cacao. Working directly with families who farm this sacred plant in Peru and Guatemala, she brings this valuable medicine to those who need her powers for healing, forgiveness, creative flow, and spirit connection. Once a corporate lawyer lost in the matrix, single and facing infertility, she is now free with a doting husband and a 2-year-old rainbow warrior, and supports others in creating lives of freedom and abundance. This was a wonderful conversation with Mandalei, who shared how her corporate lifestyle and that corporate world really made her very unhealthy, and that lifestyle didn't suit her, but she never really made the connection because she did yoga and drank green smoothies. But it wasn't until she got very sick and needed an operation and started seeing a psychotherapist that she began to think that maybe it was her lifestyle that was making her so unhealthy. So after her operation, she couldn't do anything. So all she could do was meditate and heal. And that sent her on a deep inner journey that led her to many different modalities, including plant medicine, San Pedro, and also brought her to ceremonial grade cacao that was so gentle and relaxing for her, but also deeply healing, that she was brought to meet Mama Cacao in the rainforest, and since then has set up her own company, Magic Earth Cacao, sharing ceremonial cacao with many people across the world. And in her work, she particularly helps women as well, and to reconnect to their womb space, which is that center of power, creativity and intuition. She also talks about microdosing and microdoses of psilocybin and San Pedro, and she shares the benefits that she has received from it during a particularly difficult time in her life again. And she also talks about the differences from having been on Xanax and antidepressants. She talks about the differences she feels in her body using microdosing. So lots in this episode, and she also shares a reading list if you want to learn more about plant medicines. That is shared on the show notes on my website, karenmaloney.com, and click the podcast section, and you can find out more on Mandalei's work on her website, magicearthcacao.com or mandaleimedicine.com, and Mandalei is spelt Mandalei, Mandalei. And just before we get stuck into this episode, I'm looking for people to go through the beta version of my online course. So if you're looking to feel better, change some patterns, change some limiting beliefs in your life, and generally just feel better, feel in control of your life, feel happier, pop me an email, support@karenmaloney.com, and I'll send you more details. But in the meantime, enjoy this episode. Welcome everybody, and thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today I have the wonderful Mandalei Kuhn joining me. So first of all, thanks for joining today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a long time coming.
I know we've been destined to extend our connection or put it off a little bit, but here we are today, and I'm super excited to talk to you and learn more about your work and bring more of your knowledge to the audience as well. And from your bio as well, I just love how you were a lawyer and you left the matrix. So maybe if you can just share a little bit on your background as well and what brought you to your work today.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for most of us who have gone through big transformations, it's not always an easy bullet point story,
Hmm.
but they're circular in how they happen. So I'll try to be as succinct as possible. But
Yeah.
basically, I was, as you said, I was a lawyer. I had been working in the corporate world for close to 10 years. Maybe it was 10 years. And I was on Xanax, antidepressants a couple of different
Mm.
times. Starting in law school was the first time I went on antidepressants. I, drank. There was client dinner, so we'd go out and drink heavily. All weekend. I smoked cigarettes. I didn't have a very healthy lifestyle, though I did
Mhm.
yoga and I drank green smoothies. But my environment that I was working in, a heavily masculine dominated environment,
Mm.
riddled with competition and comparison and judgment, led me to be sick inside. I developed massive fibroids on my uterus that became dangerous, the doctor said, and had to be
Mm.
removed. So it was at that time, after having that operation, just prior to it, I sought psychotherapy for the first time in my life. I was
Mm.
36 years old. And through psychotherapy, I learned like, oh, maybe this lifestyle I have of working in law, this competitive environment, the crazy hours, maybe it's what's making me unhealthy. Part of what was making me unhealthy anyway. So I had my operation. And from that point, in the healing process thereafter, I couldn't drive a car. I couldn't ride a bike. I could barely walk. I couldn't work for months. I really only had time to meditate and heal. I couldn't go to the gym or exercise anymore. Those were things that kept my mind straight, that kept my mental health okay,
Wow.
despite all the unhealthy additives to my environment I had. So I dove deep into meditation during my healing process and realized I can't go back to that life. As the doctor said, if you don't have some Eastern doctors, I'm talking about acupuncturists and therapists, and when told me, if you don't change your lifestyle, you're just going to find yourself back here again. And even the Western doctors said something similar. Well, they said it's just going to come back if you don't have babies and change your hormonal makeup. That's a whole another
Mm.
story and another
Yeah.
podcast I've actually already done. But
Yeah.
that was the turning point for me to the work that I'm doing now, helping others to realize what is not working in their lives so that they can change it and create happiness and health,
Mm.
learn how to manifest and create the lives that they want.
Yeah. So
So,
important, and thanks for sharing that as well. And it's unfortunate sometimes we have to go through, or we don't have to, but we go through these experiences before we see the bigger picture and begin to make change, or even begin to be curious about, maybe there is something about the way I'm living that's not in alignment, that's not supportive, that's not making me feel my best. So I love
yes.
when you share that as well. And then I know you work with cacao a lot as well. And when did that come into your life?
Yeah, so that would have been shortly after. After I had my operation, I knew that I had to leave the corporate world, the legal world. I knew that I had to treat my body better. I knew that I really wanted to have children one day, so I was going to have to look after my womb space and heal her
Mm.
after having such a major operation. That's when I found plant medicine. I started working with San Pedro, a cactus that comes from the Andes Mountains, a psychoactive plant. I'm sure you're familiar with it living in
Mhm.
Mexico where they have peyote. They're very similar in there. I've never done peyote myself, but I understand they can be quite similar in the healing experiences that one has. But I started with that plant first. And specifically, the reason for me to start working with psychoactive plants was to heal the womb space, which I
Mm.
found meant I also had to heal my heart and my ancestral line, and that there was so much more in it. And cacao came to me at that time as an integration tool. So a friend of mine in Ireland introduced me to ceremonial cacao. Prior to that, I'd only ever heard of chocolate, as a
Mhm.
lot of
Yeah.
people. And we were using her. He said, we'll do a little cacao ceremony. We were doing a psilocybin ceremony the next day.
Oh, wow.
And he said, we'll do a cacao ceremony first. And I'm like, oh, I love chocolate. This sounds interesting. I guess you can do a ceremony with anything.
Yeah.
Like it's going to shave a chocolate bar. So, anyways, I learned very quickly. I felt the power of her medicine, just holding her in a cup in a little circle with a few of our friends. And yeah, from there, that day, that experience, it was a very sunny day in Ireland. We went to go sit on a hill, not the Hill of Slane, but very near there,
Mm.
and just had the most gentle, relaxing, but lighthearted, yet deep healing experience. Just all lying there, not saying anything to each other, under the sun, the earth on our backs. And I couldn't help but compare that experience afterwards to working with Wachuma or San
Mm.
Pedro and Rape, and Sinenga, these other plants I've been working with that are quite harsh in their approach, I guess, if you will, their effect on the physical body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was just blown away by how gentle cacao was on our physical body. And I didn't know when I would drink ceremonial cacao again. And I can't remember when it was after that, but she became a regular practice for me as a way to integrate the ceremonies that I was doing with the master plants. And at some point, I knew I had to go meet her in the jungle at
Mm.
her original source. So I really felt that, through the plant medicine ceremonies, I was definitely connecting to the womb space. I was definitely clearing stuff. I was definitely healing stuff. And the cacao was doing the same for me, but just in such a gentle way. And I felt to myself, I never knew I founded Magic Earth Cacao, which is a cacao business that I run supporting indigenous families in Guatemala and in Peru.
Mm.
And you have the links to that you can share. But I didn't know I was going to be doing this at
Yeah.
that time. I just knew, oh my God, like the healing that is accessible to people through this really gentle plant, like it has to be shared. Other people have to learn about ceremonial cacao. And it's not just the cacao herself, it's drinking her in ceremony with
Mm.
others and led by a guide with the purpose of healing and awakening to your true self that is so powerful. So I had the sense that I wanted everyone to know about ceremonial cacao. I just didn't know when that would happen or how it would happen. And
That's
I
it.
had a plan to go with one of my teachers to the jungle in Peru to work with some other master plants. And I said, I'm going to be there at her source. I have to meet her. But it wasn't very easy to visit a cacao finca.
Mm.
It was a bit of a journey to try to find somebody who, and thankfully I spoke Spanish. It would have been
Oh,
impossible if I
yeah.
didn't speak Spanish.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a bit of a journey to find somebody who was going to allow a complete stranger from the internet to come visit their small
Yeah,
family
absolutely.
farm.
Yeah.
But I did connect with someone, luckily, and yeah, I traveled far and wide, getting motion sickness affliction after motion sickness affliction,
Mm.
traveling by bus and train and car, deep into the jungle to meet the cacao plant, to meet Mama
Wow.
Cacao at her her birthplace. And that was really important for me before being able to share her with others, that I
Yeah.
got to meet her and receive her permission
Yeah.
to share her with others, which I did. And from
Mm.
there, when I came back to Ireland from there, I brought back a few bars with me. I set up a ceremony, didn't know if anybody would show up.
Mm-hmm.
It was completely booked out with a waiting list.
Wow.
And everyone who sat in ceremony with me had mind blowing experiences. Of course, as you know, you work with
Yeah.
cacao yourself. And everyone wanted to know, where can I buy this ceremonial cacao?
Mm.
Specifically, this cacao that comes from Peru. It's processed in the same valley where the plant San Pedro or Wachuma comes from. So I ordered a few more bars, had them delivered. They went right away, and I was just
Mm.
providing this ceremonial cacao at my ceremonies for people to have if they connected with her in the ceremony.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Lovely.
she grew and evolved from there, and Magic Earth Cacao was born. COVID happened, and I was pregnant, heavily pregnant. So everything had to go online.
Mm-hmm.
So an online shop was created. I didn't even know how to do that. I didn't know that that's what I wanted to do, but I was also having a baby. So I'm like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing, because everyone is
Yeah.
messaging me asking, where can I get my cacao? I need my cacao more than ever right now in these
Wow. Yeah.
lockdowns.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's also at the time when I connected with the Rukushuleu Women's Collective and San Marcos La Laguna in Guatemala. And after my son was born, went over to visit them and stay with them in their facilities and in their, it's called the Enchanted Forest, where they process the cacao on the lake. And yeah, so
Wow.
Magic Earth Cacao was born through a journey to heal my womb space and
Mm,
heal my heart, to manifest my baby and my dream life. And in the process, I get to support two beautiful initiatives, one in
mm.
Peru, one in Guatemala, and I'm very, very happy with how it has all happened and how many lives Magic Earth Cacao and the journey I took for that being born out of me to reach so many people.
Absolutely. And that's exactly it. You know, you went with the journey and you trusted and you were willing to go within and heal and do whatever it needed to do, as opposed to just kind of avoid and go, no, I'll just go back to what I know. Because, you know, that's a reality as well, because it's scary to step into the unknown. It's scary to walk away from what you've known for anyone in any capacity. But when we are led and when we are guided, the magic that can unfold is just so incredible. But we'll never know if we don't trust and just kind of follow. And the thing about it is, as well, we don't need to know what's going to happen because we can never know. But you know that story of the unfolding as well is just so beautiful. And I remember my first ceremonial cacao experience. It was in Ireland as well, back home, like a few
Mm,
years ago now, and it had started coming up for me, and like that I was like, what the hell is this? Like, why is this
mm,
chocolate calling me? Like, I don't understand. But again, I know when something calls me like that, I know to go and explore. So myself, and I brought my mother as well, we went to a ceremony outside Galway in Loughrea, I think it was.
mm.
And it was, yeah, beautiful. And we were both really like, I don't know what this is or what's going to happen. But I remember afterwards as well, because it was a bit of a drive back home, the lady who was facilitating was like, well, if you have some time, I would suggest just going to the woods, just going for a little walk and having a little wind down before you drive back home again. And that's what we did. And I remember being in the forest, and oh my God, I felt like just this bliss and this euphoria and just this love that was like pouring out of me as we were walking through the forest. And I was like, wow, what is this? And, you know, then I went deeper on my own journey as well. So it's so beautiful. And coming back to your own story again, and especially the womb healing aspect as well.
Mm.
And is that something that is an area that you like helping people with as well? Or what's the bigger psycho spiritual aspect as well on healing the womb space, individually and collectively?
Gosh, the psycho spiritual aspect, that is such a great term. I don't know if I fully understand that term. Um,
Well, for me, it means like, you know, sometimes it's not just a physical issue that's presenting. There's always a deeper, whether emotional or a
yes,
spiritual
of
aspect, or
course.
the deeper meanings of, you know, that space as well and what it means and what it holds. That's what I make it to mean.
Yeah, so for a while I was doing womb healings in person, helping people to heal their own, facilitating the healing of the
Mm-hmm.
womb space and teaching women about the power of their womb space. So how I learned about the power of my own womb space was obviously through having a major operation. I also had undergone IVF and froze my eggs. So there was a lot of physical
Mm.
trauma to my womb space. And once I started the process to heal that, is when I learned that, oh, as you say, it's psychospiritual as well. It's not just the physical stuff that happens, the sex with unworthy partners or the abuse that has happened in our family line.
Mm-hmm.
It is also how we think about ourselves. It is also what we allow happen ourselves in work, in relationships. So for me, it was particularly a loss of power and creativity in my job
Mm.
and in the relationships that I had with men. And I was able to see this quite clearly once I started the healing process. So simple as sitting in meditation with my hands on my womb space. And for many women that I have helped, it's the same. Once you give yourself that quiet time in stillness to
Mm.
connect with the intelligence of your womb, it'll start to come up what what is missing in your life. It'll start to come up where you've had a loss of power, where you could be more creative, where you have been disregarding her. What I always say to women is to remember three things: your power, creativity, and intuition. Your womb is the seat of these three things. If you're not in your full power, if you don't feel creative, you're not expressing yourself creatively, and you don't feel a connection to your own intuition, if you're looking for answers outside yourself, well, then you need to go on a womb healing journey, because those three things are the main purposes for our energetic womb space to be. This was true for my journey anyway. I know every woman's journey is unique, and I can talk a lot more about it. But when I help women to connect to the womb space and to heal, these are the three things I ask them to focus on. And then we go deeper from there.
Wow. That's powerful. And when you said that it's connected to, or was connected to, that sense of loss of power and creativity, I just got goosebumps all over my body.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I again, I think that's very true. And do you, when you work with people as well, say even if it's not on womb healing, just in general, like that, leaving the matrix, moving through the noise and busyness of daily life, and bringing that connection back to their intuition as well, is cacao always part of that process when you work with people as well? And how does that look?
No, it's not always part of the process. Actually, a lot of times it's not part of the process. Many people come to me who don't have a cacao practice and aren't called to having a cacao practice, which is totally fine. This is something I like to say to people as well. And this is something that I teach in my cacao ceremony facilitators course, is that cacao is not for everybody. Um, she is an energy. She is a spiritual practice that appeals to some and works for some, but maybe not for others. She's also nutrient dense. And for some people, her scientific, I don't know if that's the right word, her makeup might not gel well with their own internal scientific makeup. I know some people who cacao just does not agree with. So I think that's very important, especially because cacao has become so popular now. Like when you did your first ceremony with your mom, and when I first learned of ceremonial cacao and started ceremonies in Ireland, hardly anybody knew about her. But then COVID happened and she became very popular, which is brilliant, which is amazing. Like the Mayan proverb goes, cacao will come out of the forest to restore balance and harmony to the world once we've lost it. And I feel like that's exactly why she became so popular. It was just the right time. So I think that's really important for people to know, especially in the social media world where trends happen. And when people are on the healing journey or they're on a spiritual path, you can get stuck thinking, oh, okay, people are doing that, so I should probably do that too.
Yeah.
Give it a go, but don't become attached to anything, is what I like to say, because I know a lot of people who I work with, they've tried cacao and it's just not their medicine. It's not their
Yeah.
spiritual practice, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, it connects back to what you were saying, well, in general, but even connected to the womb space as well. It's when we're connected to our intuition, we will be guided and we will be led to the things that are calling us, that yeah, we
Yeah.
don't have to follow trends. I mean, fine, yeah, if you're curious, but we don't have to follow the trends. It's listening to our own truth as well. So yeah, so then helping people even move through that noise and busyness of daily life. How do you help them to, maybe if they're in like a really masculine corporate world as well, to connect to something bigger, maybe within themselves as well, and what they're here to kind of bring forward in life? How do you help them move through or make that shift as well if it's something that's calling them?
Yeah, well, definitely time in nature. So all my clients are women.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind working with men, but this is how it is. All my
Yeah.
clients are women, and so connecting to the womb space is automatically a part of the work that we do together. You can't make these shifts out of a masculine dominated corporate world um, without connecting to your womb space, because probably what's happening is you've been neglecting her and disregarding her your entire life, from the time you began menstruating, when she became a real, not just energetic but physical part of your being. You probably started to disregard her at that stage. So connecting to the womb space is a huge part of the work that I do with every woman that I work with. I suggest cacao, of course, if it resonates. If it doesn't, that's fine, as I said, but also time in nature, nature walks, forest bathing, swimming in the sea, swimming in any natural bodies of water. Swimming pools are cool too, but natural bodies of water and the wisdom that they carry are so important, and especially for connecting to the waters of our own wombs. all the natural bodies of water, those are the womb waters of Mother Earth. So when we swim ourselves in these waters, the waters of our own connect automatically with this
Wow.
wisdom if we're open to it. So that is a big part of the spiritual practices I incorporate with people I coach.
I love that. And even as you're talking about, when I think back as well, I totally and utterly lived in my masculine energy. I was that go, go, go hustle, so afraid to stop, to rest. I thought I'd be seen as weak. And it's
Mm,
just so mind blowing to me. And like that, I literally knew nothing about my cycle, about my hormonal cycle, about how my body was working. I just knew, like, oh, every month I'd bleed and, basics, but I didn't know the bigger picture of like the whole length of the hormonal cycle and what was actually happening. Like, it just kind of bamboozles me of how cut off we get from ourselves just through
mm,
life and growing up and society and all these expectations that we may take on consciously or a lot of the time unconsciously. And it's just like, oh my God. And like you mentioned earlier as well, like the wisdom of our body and our womb, even if we would just stop and connect and put a hand on any part and be willing to sit and to move through the noise and allow it to express itself is phenomenal.
yes.
But I know for
Yeah.
me back then, it just seemed like insane, it was just like, I can't stop, I can't stop.
Mm,
So yeah, that's really beautiful as well. Just learning to take the time to move into more stillness and rest and nature is just so powerful. I love that.
yes. And honoring the seasons of the cycle,
That's
the
another
four
thing.
seasons of the cycle should be that's something we should learn as soon as we start to before we even start to menstruate.
Yeah.
We should be learning, boys and girls. I feel like they should be learning this in school.
Yeah. I do
Women
too.
are innately connected to the cycles of the moon, and they, once they start to menstruate, will live on a monthly cycle of four seasons,
Hmm.
just like Mother Earth throughout the year. I think that would help us all get along a lot better and
Absolutely.
men and women understand each other, but I just feel like the world would work a lot better if we could all honor that.
Yeah. And it's funny, I've had a couple of conversations before around cycles, specifically in the female cycle. And I remember one woman had created this moon clock that had the four seasons that they can move. And they were like, it's even a great tool for the family and the husband because they're like, oh, this is where she's at the moment. This is what's happening. Okay, it all makes sense. It helps everyone.
Absolutely.
And then another
Yeah.
lady that I spoke with a while ago about the menstrual cycle as well, she said, and this blew my mind because I was not aware, and she was American, so it was related to American studies as well. But the scientific community did not even study the female hormonal cycle because it was deemed too complex. And this was up until 1992. The minute she said that, I was like, oh, well, then. I was like, that makes total sense. I was like, that's why the world is the way it is. And, it's set up on the male cycle of 24 hours, which is just like,
Mm,
yes, I can go back again and do the grind again because I've gone through my whole downtime and everything in the 24 hours. And I was just mind blown. I was like, wow. And again, I agree with you. I think we should be taught this because, like you say, it benefits everyone when we know a little bit more.
mm,
Yeah. But something else that we were chatting about just before we started recording, and you mentioned how microdosing was coming up for you as well, kind of in your work and a transition that you're going through. So maybe if you want to talk a little bit about that as well.
yeah. Briefly, as I said, I started working with plant medicines
Hmm.
4 years ago. And I didn't have the need to start microdosing until last year, early last year, after I became a mom. So I
Mm,
will say one disclaimer to this conversation and working with the womb space. It becomes a lot harder after becoming pregnant and then having a baby. I found that anyway, and a lot
wow.
of the women I know and work with find the same thing because all of your energy is going to keeping a baby alive. And you'd think you're still so super connected to the womb, but it's just everything is going
Wow.
towards your baby and your children. Um, I
Wow.
found
That's
myself
interesting.
close to River becoming 1 year old experiencing postpartum depression. And like I was in bliss in the fourth trimester. And then after that we had left Ireland, flown to the US, and we were in Guatemala with the Rukushulea Women's Collective. And we were on a really exciting journey. And then once that was over, just something hit me. I just changed. I was like, wait a second. Or I got to a new stage of motherhood as well. And I was like, I'm not okay. My joy is gone. I'm lackluster. Yes, I was definitely sleep deprived. I still am, but severely so at that time. And I'm like, but it's more than that. Or maybe that was all it was. Whatever it was, I was really down, and I knew I did not want to go back to pharmaceutical antidepressants. But that's where all roads were leading with the way that I was feeling. So I, already knowing a lot about psilocybin, having sat in ceremony with psilocybin a lot, I sought out a source. I know many sources, but I sought out the one that I wanted and started microdosing psilocybin close to my son being 1 year old. And it was brilliant, totally lifted the dark cloud, totally didn't help that I wasn't sleeping. But it lifted that dark cloud. It took away my anxiety. I also was doing a lot of swimming in the cold sea. Even though I'm in Portugal and it's super sunny, don't let the Atlantic Ocean fool
Yeah.
you. She's still really, really cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's when I began microdosing psilocybin. And I don't know if I shared about it on Instagram or some people just knew, but other moms started asking me, and people on Instagram started. I must have said something on social media, but people started asking me. I'll get random texts or DMs from people saying, "I heard that you know about microdosing. What can you tell me?" So yeah, I actually did a post today about it because I've started microdosing San Pedro. I found myself in the past couple of months going to those low places. It's not a consistent low now,
Yeah.
but it's an up and down, and the downs are pretty down for me. So yeah, I'm leaning
Wow.
on plants again. I really believe in them. I tried pharmaceutical antidepressants a few times in my past, and they did work, but I just feel that Mother Earth has gifted us these natural plants. They grow in the soil, the same place our food that we eat comes from. It just makes sense to me that we should be using these instead of chemicals manufactured in a laboratory, if that's an option.
Yeah.
Which, in this case, in my case, and in the case of many people who are right now microdosing psychoactive plants, it is an option. So, and that's not to say I know there are some people out there who really need pharmaceutical intervention, and that is totally fine. That is perfect. We're all on a different journey, and it's really important that we
Yeah.
don't minimize anybody's experience, especially if someone is struggling mentally or emotionally.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And that was something I was going to ask you, having gone on and the antidepressant and the pharmaceutical ones and now microdosing with the plant medicines, you say both work, but how do you experience them different as well? Do you feel them very differently in your body? What
Yes.
is
Oh my God. I'm so glad you asked me that before we finished this call.
mm,
Because that was something I was just observing today. So I remember, so Xanax it's an anti-anxiety medication, right? So I used to get severe panic attacks. Like I would actually pass out in public places.
wow.
I would get up for public speaking and I would just have to like walk out of the room. Like my name would be called to give a speech in class and I would just leave and I would take the failed grade. It was that bad.
Wow.
But the difference, so with Xanax as an anti-anxiety, it works very well. Like you take one or two or three or however many are prescribed, and I mean the anxiety just disappears. It just works. But you're fuzzy. You can't drive a car. You're probably not going to be up for reading a book. Maybe you can like veg out and watch a movie. You're not going to be with it. With the other antidepressants that I had taken, they worked quite quickly and quite well on me. But there are other side effects with them. Like, for example, with one of them, I had to also take sleeping pills because they would prevent me from sleeping naturally.
Okay.
There is also a period of time where you have to build up your dosage, and then you couldn't just stop them when you felt better or when your external circumstances changed in such a way that you were able to come off them. You would have to taper off them, and you'd have to go to the doctor and be seen. And there could have been like dry mouth and dry everything in the body was a side effect of one of them. And then with them also, I found that they could make me anxious.
Wow.
like take away the dark cloud, but then I'd be like manic, you know?
Wow.
And I've seen other people have this experience as well, where it's like you got to get loads of things done, and you're on this high from the medication, and you just feel like you can do anything and everything. With plants, with psilocybin, and with San Pedro, I haven't had that experience. It's been really gentle from the very start. And it's like you can feel it quite subtly in your body coming up. It's not like with pharmaceuticals where it's like, I'm down. Oh my God, I've been on those pills for 7 days and now I'm finally happy again.
Mm.
Great, that worked. It's not like that. I definitely can feel it in my body that it's subtle. I can see things a lot clearer. Colors are brighter. Plants outside and in my house are more vibrant and bigger. And it's like they're speaking to you almost if you're willing to
Mm.
listen. And I can still perform tasks really well and with calm. I don't feel in a super rush to get everything done like I might be without these plants.
Wow.
It's my natural. I grew up in a family where it was like, and in a society in Las Vegas where everything was available 24/7 and you
Mm.
get things fast. And I find I can go to that place in myself if I'm not connected spiritually. And plants just help me bring myself back to that place of calm. Like everything's going to happen in the right time. I don't have to worry.
Mm.
If it doesn't happen today, it'll happen tomorrow. If it doesn't happen tomorrow, it'll happen when it's meant to happen. So I find that plant medicine, microdosing plant medicine, keeps me connected and not just happy, but
Mhm.
connected.
Wow.
I don't know. I guess it's a little bit hard to describe, but
Yeah, no,
hopefully
I understand.
listeners get a gist.
Yeah, because it's the feeling, it's the inner feeling. But like literally, when you just said that, like when we are not connected spiritually, that's when we go into the franticness, the
Yes,
3D physicality of the material and the hustle and the bustle. Like that is the truth for me as well. When I fall out of that connection, I'm asleep.
yes.
I'm in the mayhem, and it's like, whoa, what has happened here? And that's so powerful. I love that you said that. And just as a last question before we wrap up, and you share where people can find out more of your work as well, what do you say to people as well who may think, oh, those drugs and doing psychoactive plants and they're just drugs? What do you say
Mm,
to that
yeah.
question?
Well, I invite them to read one of the many books that are out there that talk about the benefits and the medical research studies that have been done going back to the 70s. There's a number of documentaries that I would recommend. I would love to give you a list of resources that have helped me understand, and maybe you can share that
Yeah,
with the
absolutely.
listeners.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
Great.
Michael Pollan
He's great. Yeah.
has a few books that are really brilliant and very easy to read.
Hmm.
He's a great person to read. Terence McKenna, one of the pioneers of psychoactive plants. There's a documentary of his on Netflix. There's loads of information out there from really academically astute people. And then, there are some people who aren't even going to believe them. There are some
Hmm.
people who are going to want to hold on to the belief that drugs are drugs and they're bad and they ruin the world and they ruin people's lives. And that's okay. If somebody wants to hold on to that belief, well, they can carry it with them into the next life.
Hmm.
And we can't change everyone's
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
Um, there's actually Michael Pollan has a book, How to Change Your Mind.
Mhm.
He probably wrote it because we can't change everyone's mind. But yeah, I invite people like that to do a little bit of research, to educate themselves. That's the best way to educate ourselves.
Totally.
We can only change our own minds. We can only change our own lives. No one can do it for us.
Yeah, so true. And I love, as Brené Brown says as well, if someone's not in the ring with me, it's like I don't have to engage because, if anyone does experience them or even reads or educates themselves and learns about the power, it's a very different mentality to just the stigma so years ago of drugs are bad and they're class A and whatever. So, yeah,
Mm.
really interesting. What a fascinating conversation. I have loved connecting with you, Mandalay, and please share where people can find out more about your work as well before we finish.
Yes, of course. So, if you're interested in a ceremonial cacao practice, you can check out Magic Earth Cacao. I'm sure the links will be
Mhm.
there for you to have a look. Our cacao comes from Peru, it's all ceremonial, grown in the Amazon jungle and grown in the jungles of Guatemala and processed by the hands of indigenous people who put their love and their prayers into every bean that they peel. There's no governments in the middle. There are no co-op organizations. The cacao comes directly from these families by airmail to Ireland and then is distributed from there to other parts of the world. Also, I am finalizing a pre-recorded video course for people who want to learn how to hold cacao ceremonies themselves. So that will be available. I'm hoping within the next 3 weeks I'll be able to launch it. But if you're interested in that, you can subscribe to my email list, either through Magic Earth Cacao or Mandalei Medicine. And I am feeling called to open up to one-to-one coaching again. So I had to put a halt on my one-to-one coaching last year. It was just too much with not getting enough sleep with my son. He's just a little over 2 years now, and I have some support with him. So I'm really looking forward to helping some other people change their lives, take the steps that I was able and so fortunate enough to be able to take to find health and happiness. So yeah, if anyone's interested in one-to-one coaching, we can have a little chat and see if working together would suit us both.
Beautiful. Amazing. And yes, as always, I will have the links as well from the show notes on my website. And if you wish to share that resource as well, I can also share that as well with some reading options or further information. And thank you so, so much. Such a beautiful conversation. And it was so lovely to connect. Thanks for joining.
You too, Karen, and thank you. Can I just say you are an amazing podcaster. You're so succinct and you ask amazing questions. You make it really easy. So thank you very much for that. You're brilliant.
Thanks for listening. And before you go, I would love to ask you a massive favor. If you enjoyed this episode or any episode of the podcast, I would love for you to leave a short review on Apple Podcasts to help it grow. If you could do that, I would greatly appreciate it.